Let's talk about gated communities. This concept has become very popular in many different countries around the world, where entire residential complexes and even large districts are fenced off from the surroundings with security guards at the gates. This is actively promoted by developers as an additional advantage that increases the safety of residents. But is it really good for the cities, and can it be done without it? I wanna make it clear right away that I'm not going to convince everyone that they should just stop building fences and everything will be fine immediately. It is clear that if such fences appear, there are some objective reasons for that. So let's talk about the pros and cons of gated communities. It's obvious that the main reason why residential complexes are fenced off is security. When the situation around is hostile or seems to be, the tendency to fence yourself off is very high, to prevent any suspicious people from wandering around your cozy yard and stealing your grill. A study conducted in the United States shows that the gated communities experience a decrease of burglaries, but at the same time theft rate increase at the surrounding neighborhoods. A similar study from South Africa, on the contrary, showed that the level of theft in gated communities is higher than the city average. These seem to be the opposite results, but I suppose there are some logic in there. Perhaps in the United States the level of prosperity is more equal and it's easier for criminals to operate where there are fewer obstacles. Meanwhile, in South Africa, I guess, wealthier people most likely live in compact settlements and the presence of a fence immediately signals that there is something to steal. So it's not so straightforward. But there are also some serious minuses. The feeling of safety in gated communities is actually deceptive. Some accidental violations may really go away, but if someone really wants to get into the area and do something bad, they will most likely find an opportunity. And the residents inside may not be ready for such a turn of events. At the same time, residents of gated communities begin to perceive the surrounding area as hostile and begin to avoid it and lock themselves inside their community. Obviously, the maintenance of fences, security guards and video surveillance means additional costs that make housing in gated communities more expensive, which stimulates further stratification and atomization of society into different groups that will intersect and communicate with each other less and less. And these are not an abstract things, but hundreds of very different cases, such as children being kicked off the playground because they are not from our complex. For some people, this may seem to be something abstract, but this is actually a very significant point. For a comfortable city, it is very important to have good connectivity of the environment, especially pedestrian one. In simple words, residents should be able to move around the city in convenient and direct ways. And this is perfectly provided, for example, by city's block structure. But if a large part of the city's territory is fenced off with a solid fence and removed from the overall city structure, many citizens will have to go around it to get where they need to go. This will lead to wasted time and make the city less comfortable, and some people will be forced to take a car. The more such closed areas are created and the bigger they are, the more critical this problem will become. It can also cause inconvenience to the residents themselves if the exit from the territory is too far from their homes. And instead of a short way to the goal, they will have to walk a much longer distance or drive a car. Another problem is the way the streets look next to such gated complexes. If there are solid fences on all sides, it makes the urban environment aggressive and unpleasant. And if there are a lot of gated communities, the streets can turn into a labyrinth between the fences. Walking along this kind of streets is not only uncomfortable, but sometimes is literally dangerous, as some studies have shown. All of this makes people walk less and drive more, with all the consequences that follow, such as increased congestion, noise and air pollution. A gated community is not a good environment for business development. For most businesses, the more clients the better, while the main idea of gated communities is to keep strangers from walking around. In such conditions, it's unlikely that a cafe or a shop will appear. They will simply lack customers. Thus, the residents themselves will have to go shopping or to a restaurant in some other neighborhood too. It's good when everything is fine, but even in a closed complex, a fire or a heart attack can happen to one of the residents. Then the emergency services will need to get to the territory, and this can be a problem. It's good if everything goes smoothly, but it doesn't always happen like that. And the delay due to gate not being opened on time can be critical for someone. For example, this is the Comfort Town residential complex in Kyiv, Ukraine. It's a quite big residential district built up on the site of a former factory, and it's completely fenced off from the rest of the city. Recently, a Russian missile hit one of its buildings and a fire began, but because of the gate at the entrance, the fire crew was unable to quickly enter the area, making the impact of the fire more severe than it could have been. And even without an emergency, how will a courier with your pizza or a delivery from a furniture store get into the territory? Oh, and by the way, what's gonna stop a mock robber from the dressing up like a food delivery guy and then taking your laptop in his backpack from a bench outside your house while you were sure it was safe? I guess nothing? As I said in the beginning, if residents are worried about their safety, there are most likely reasons for this. But the struggle for housing security should not be opposed to the overall comfort and convenience of the city. Closed residential areas don't actually solve the problems that cause them to appear, but simply hide from them. But it doesn't make these problems disappear or even become smaller. In fact, the appearance of such gated communities means that the city or country cannot solve the security problems globally, and residents are trying to do it by themselves on a smaller scale. In general, a city should have three types of space: public, private and semi-private. Public space is a street or a maybe square that absolutely everybody has access to. It should be convenient, comfortable and beneficial for business development. Private space in general is the housing that belongs to specific people. And semi-private is a space in between of those two types that is accessible only to a limited number of people, such as residents of a building, and is protected from access by others. So residents should have access to each type of space with a certain balance between them. And in my opinion, the best way out is the good old block structure. Instead of building up huge areas with pure housing and a fence around, it's much better to make a block grid of normal streets. And each block should be built in such a way that there is a closed courtyard for residents inside and the commercial areas outside that can be used by both residents and the random passers-by. This approach provides a well-connected environment as well as an opportunity for local business development. And you don't need to build a special fences. In fact, the fence that separates inner yard from the street is the building itself with cafes and shops built into it. And walking along this kind of building is much more pleasant and interesting than along a usual fence. Of course, it's also very important to properly fill the space between the buildings, making it comfortable, safe and inclusive. So in my opinion, modern cities should develop in this direction.